Hello, I'm Julie Swenson, Managing Director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin.
And I'm Mike Fisher, Milwaukee-based theater writer and dramaturg.
And I'm Jen Uphoff-Gray, founder and artistic director of Forward Theater Company. And this is Theater Forward, a monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insights into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 125 of Theater Forward.
Shut the door.
Yeah, that is an impressive feat.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at us. We've been going for a while and we are still somehow finding things to talk about, which is a delight. And this time, we are going to be returning to an annual topic for us, which is a discussion of American theater's most produced plays and most produced playwrights of the season lists. And before we get into those, just want to give a few caveats that American theater always gives when they post these lists. And we will link to both of these lists in our show notes for sure. So they base their lists on the best information that they can reasonably easily get their hands on. So there are, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of member theaters of TCG, the theater communications group that publishes American Theater Magazine. So they look at all the season listings for all of those member theaters. I know that they make a point of adding in a number. They add in Broadway. They add in a number of regional. There are a few regional theaters that are not members of TCG. Some of those bigger LORT companies, they add those in, sort of anything that they can then easily reach out. But there are, of course, thousands of small community theaters and educational theaters that are not members of TCG and are likely not having their season slates included in this list. So with that said, it is still, I think, a really fascinating and valuable snapshot of what our field is doing this season. And it's especially interesting, I think, when you can compare looking a few seasons back. So with that said, why don't we start with the plays list. I've got it right in front of me, so I'm just going to rattle through those top 10, and then I'll turn it over for thoughts from the two of you first.
Sounds good.
So this year, unlike some, the top 10 list is actually 10. There are often ties that expand the list. But this year is 10. In the 10th slot, we have The Roommate by Jen Silverman with 7 productions. 9th is Little Women, actually multiple adaptations of that by different writers, but Little Women as an umbrella, there are 7 of that. The musical Dear Evan Hansen, 7 of that. The musical Ain't Misbehavin', 7 of that. The Heart Sellers by Lloydsa, a world premiere Wisconsin play. That is in 6th place with 8 productions. We have the musical Frozen in 5th with 9 productions. The play Fat Ham by James Imes with 9 productions. In 3rd place, Eureka Day by Jonathan Spector with 14 productions. In 2nd place, Primary Trust by Ebony Booth with 21 productions. We closed our production of it 5 days ago as we record this. And in 1st place, the musical Come From Away with 23 productions. That's our list.
Yeah.
Immediate thoughts?
My immediate thought is looking at number 1, Come From Away, and number 2, Primary Trust. And so often what we program, what theaters are looking for is a salve or some reaction to the world around us, obviously, and what audiences need. And it does not go unnoticed that both of those shows are about strangers helping and kindness and what a difference that makes in the lives of others. And I find they're not just kind of 1 and 2. It goes from 14 productions of Eureka Day to 21 of Primary Trust to 23 from Come From Away. I think it's what we need right now. And the American theater is showing it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I saw, I had seen Come From Away on Broadway, and I honestly sorry, those of you out there that are huge Come From Away fans. I didn't get it. I didn't understand why it felt a little bit manipulative, a little slick, a little too sort of hammy as a story in terms of trying to deal with those of you who aren't aware. Come From Away deals with those who were the thousands of people whose planes were rerouted to Newfoundland right after September 11th. And the interaction between those many passengers and the Newfies who did so much to make them feel in a very tumultuous time. Remember, before most people had cell phones or could communicate other than through radio and television, help them feel okay. And it's a very uplifting musical. Then I saw it 2 weeks ago at Paramount in Aurora, Illinois. Not a New York slick Broadway cast, a cast of hardworking Chicago actors, fantastic actors. I don't mean anything in saying it that way to suggest they're less than. And in a story about how ordinary people can overcome adversity and come together, it just rang so differently for me. I mean, I was in tears by the end. Now, I will say, I saw it on the eve of September 11th. I also saw it as I was about to return to Stratford in Canada for the second time this year. And I mean, gales of sorrow from me as I think about how amazing Canadian people still are to Americans, despite the way this country continues to poop all over Canada through its non-leadership leadership. And so though that was a lot of sorrow in me that I was bringing into the production, but I think the production itself and the musical itself just spoke to me in a different way. And I'm very excited now to see the Milwaukee Rep production, which will inaugurate their new space. It has previews and then opens on November 8th. And I think that is going to be, for all the reasons Julie said, a very special moment for Milwaukee. I mean, the Rep itself, of course, has gone through enormous adversity this year because of everything it lost in the flooding in July, and $7.5 million of damages. And then also on top of that, trying to open a new space and to have a musical about people overcoming adversity through love and what we can build as a community. Wow. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. I'm getting goosebumps just listening to myself. I'm talking myself into this in my own words. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see it there.
It's great to hear you say that, Mike, because I will confess, and this might, surprise some folks given the things I normally like. I don't care for Come From Away. And I'm with you on the kindness. I'm with you on the true story is so powerful. I get very excited about the approach to sort of staging of the Broadway production, at least this very sort of simple wooden chairs. Let's create our spaces instead of wheeling in huge automated sets. I love that kind of stagecraft. And, maybe I need to watch it again. It's been a few years, and I for sure, Mike, I think was coming to that story with a lot of personal baggage. I was living 2 miles from the towers on September 11th with my newborn firstborn son, and lived through all of September 11th in a super up close, personal, and visceral way. And so I'm always I always struggle around the anniversary at some of the ways in which we as a country mark that anniversary. But there is some lovely music in it. And I agree completely with you, Julie, about the kindness aspect. And it's important to keep in mind, and we talked about this when we, in the spring, discussed our season announcement for this current season. We at Forward actually locked in our slate prior to the elections last November. But I think we're an outlier in that. I think that most theater companies, while they may have been far along in their process, at least the companies that we know around here, decisions were still being made about what the 25-26 season would contain when the November of 24 election happened. And I think there may well have been a little bit of pivoting to try to meet the moment a little bit for audiences. So that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, no, I have another topic. So
Oh,
continue.
yeah. So riffing on, I mean, Jen, to come back and meet you halfway and to sort of go back toward where I was on Come From Away when I first saw it. One of the things, I won't say distresses me. I mean, I think it's the moment we're in, but I am struck by how many of these plays are steeped in nostalgia, are
That's
steeped
what
in
I was going to say.
and escapism. I mean, and I
Yeah.
think and Come From Away is part of that. Primary trust. I love primary trust, but again, it's sort of this idea that we can overcome adversity through love. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just that it's maybe more optimistic than I'm feeling. Maybe that's the sort of fairest way to say it, but that's true of Fat Ham. That's true of Frozen. That's even true of the Heart Sellers. Ain't Misbehaving's a completely nostalgic look at a completely different period. You see of all of these shows, and then we're not even talking about we haven't yet about the top playwrights list, which is just stock full of murder mysteries and people who specialize in them, which is another form of escapism that people are taking. And again, there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's just I wish more of these plays, and Primary Trust, I think, comes closest, along with Eureka Day, which I didn't mention in that list, to directly confronting where we are now and trying to think that through in a way that doesn't feel like two sisters sort of going off into the frozen hinterland and finding each other and redeeming the world, which great if you're 12 and a little girl who can dress up like sort of a Cinderella lookalike. But to me, that musical has got nothing, sorry folks, nothing at all to offer the world, except for this very insipid sort of escapist fantasy that has nothing to do with the way we live now.
It is a really interesting thing that so many of these are sort of, you can call them old chestnuts, you can call them, looking back. But yeah, Ain't Misbehaving came out in what,
A
1978?
gajillion years ago.
with our own, we claim Andre DeShields because he went to undergrad at UW Madison. But, and 4 versions of Little Women.
Yeah.
That is a really interesting. I mean, somebody could do a thesis on why we're going back that far and what is it that's resonating in the world right now. That is a choice.
It's so interesting what you're saying, Mike. We had a long conversation in the office yesterday about programming in the context of the world and what helps us as a theater company, what helps our audiences and our community deal with the world around us, which I think most people listening to this podcast would be inclined to agree. It feels like the world is on fire in every direction that you look. And so this is a perfect iteration of the intention of this podcast, which was, let's take these conversations we're having around the office and like share them with interested folks. I believe deeply that plays like Primary Trust and like Little Women and like Frozen, musicals like Frozen.
You all didn't see Jen sort of have to spit that word out like it was spinach.
It was because I was looking at the list again.
Some people like that, Mike.
Yeah, I actually think it is the best possible way to help our audiences deal with what is required of us to meet the historical moment that we are in. I don't think there's anybody, and again, I can only speak to our audience in this particular situation. There is nobody coming into the Playhouse at Overture Center who is not aware of what is happening in the world. There may be degrees of knowledge and of understanding, but every single one of them knows that. And to remind people that, as Primary Trust does, that small individual acts of kindness can change the world, because they do. They do change the world. Each small act does make the world a better place, and there is a ripple effect. And reminding folks at a time when we feel unbelievably hopeless because of our inability to directly impact the big scale things that are happening around us that are causing so much distress, makes it very easy for folks to want to for me to want to stay in bed and pull the covers over my head, because it is very daunting when you feel like you have no power, no control, no ability to make positive change. And that is what the world on the big scale around us is saying to us right now. And plays like Primary Trust, like Little Women, like musicals like Frozen or Come From Away, remind us that actually there is something we can do every single day. And if we were all doing it, we could make some pretty impactful change, some pretty huge change and improvement in the world. And it gets people out of bed. It gets them thinking outside of themselves and about the people around them. And that to me feels as revolutionary as anything out there. And I think more impactful in actually addressing the world around us than reminding everybody of everything terrible that is happening. And so I agree with you. I wish there were more newer plays. There, there's 4 musicals on this list. There's, sort of chess, a lot of these Little Women adaptations are newer, but it's still, I mean, it doesn't feel like a new play with air quotes around it. It is a smaller percentage of envelope pushing, subject matter pushing new plays than in past years. And there aren't that many plays on this list that I think we would necessarily program at Forward. But I do think these plays are meeting the moment in constructive ways, not in like sellout ways.
Well, to be completely constructive and again meet you halfway, Jen,
Please.
and first of all, I basically emphatically co-sign, with exceptions for particular shows,
Sure,
like Frozen, everything you just said. And one of the positive ways to think about this list, and by the way, I would never in a million years, people I know and love would shoot me if they saw me lumping Little Women, which is one of the great works of American literature, full stop. And Frozen. I mean, and I'll take adaptations of Little Women from now until the world freezes. See what I did there? Over. Because of its message about female empowerment. And one of the things and themes I love about this list is the number of plays that are about girl or women power. Frozen is in fact one of those, as is Little Women, as is The Roommate, twisted and dark as Jen Silverman's play is, as is, and this is one that's so near and dear, I think, to most people listening who are in Wisconsin, because we birthed this play through the Milwaukee Rep, The Heart Sellers, which is a beautiful play about 2 young Asian women trying to make their way in 1970s America as recent immigrants. And if you go to the new playlist, you have people like Kate Hamill on there, whose adaptations are all about, whether it's through Austen or Little Women, about girl power. And then also, and I do want to make a special shout out for this, one of the people who appears on the top 10 playwrights list is Sanosh Tusi, who won the Pulitzer in 2023 for English, and whose play Wish You Were Here, about a group, which the English is also about a group of women, and Wish You Were Here, which I've just seen a production of yesterday in Chicago, which is glorious at Remy Bumbo Theater. It's playing into mid-October. Please see it if you're anywhere within the ability to do it. That's a play about a bunch of 5 Iranian women right before and then during the first decade of the Iranian Revolution. So they're not in Tehran, but they're in a city in Iran, sort of wrestling with what that means in their lives. I mean, it wrecked me, but not, Jen, to your point, because it was all gloom and doom. It was also about the way in which women can hold space with each other against all the terror that is surrounding us and makes us not want to get out of bed in the morning. It was just a great production. She
is an extraordinary writer. I adore reading her plays and really hope to get a chance to see some in person soon. I'm glad to hear the Remy Bumpo production's so good. Because of you're bringing up the playwrights list, Mike, why don't I just real quick read through that so that we can have that as well for context. Okay, so there's a lot of names on this list because there's a lot of ties. With 7 productions this year, we have Katori Hall, John DiPietro, Sanosh Tusi, Stephen Levinson, and the team of Henry Lewis, Henry Shields, and Jonathan Sayer. With 8 productions, we have Jeffrey Hatcher, Richard Maltby Jr., Sandy Rustin, and Tennessee Williams. With 9 productions, we've got Henrik Ibsen, Arthur Miller, and Jennifer Lee. With 10 productions, Rajiv Joseph and Lloyd Suh. With 11 productions, we've got Jen Silverman and Ken Ludwig. With 13 productions, we have August Wilson, James Iams, and Kate Hamill. Jonathan Spector is on the list with 15 productions. Ebony Booth, writer of Primary Trust, is on the list with 21 productions to match the 21 productions of Primary Trust. We've got the team of Irene Sankoff and David Hein at 23. They are responsible for Come From Away. And topping the list for the 4th time, if you count the one time that she was tied at the top of the list, with 24 productions, Lauren Gunderson.
Woohoo!
That's kind of cool. And pointing out with Lauren that there's like 8 shows, 8 different titles, 9 different titles responsible for her 24 productions. And our spring production, the Rolling World premiere of Lady Disdain, is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, American theater may need to make a rule, kind of like they exclude Dickens and Shakespeare from this list. They may need to exclude Lauren's Christmas plays, which are their own separate. I mean, they're wonderful, but they're their own separate deal. And I love Lauren Gunderson, but those plays don't necessarily reflect much about anything except that they're good holiday plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not just that. I mean, it shows
That's
how much she's writing, how much is resonating, and how many people are grabbing different titles of hers, which is really special.
Yeah. And to some of the points you were making earlier, Mike, I think, and again, Lauren has a wide range of titles about different topics, different styles. She's got musicals. There are 2 productions of INU on her list, one of which is the play that we did 9 years ago. And the other is the brand new world premiere musical adaptation of INU. So yes, musicals and plays for young audiences and the Christmas plays. But I do think a common thread through her work that is part of the reason she's so popular around the country and resonating so much is she just about always has strong, passionate, intelligent women at the heart of her stories. And the vast majority of her plays take something about our past and examine it through a contemporary lens that allows us to understand our present better. Whether it's looking at a Little Women or a Peter Pan and thinking how can we look at this in a way that wrestles with the way we understand the world in 2025, or looking at Shakespeare or looking at scientists for like Ada Lovelace or Henrietta Leavitt. I mean, she looks at a story from our past, whether fictional or factual, and puts it through a contemporary lens. And again, I think in times like ours, figuring out what we've, learning from history is a great tool to grappling with our present.
Well, and making it her story, right? I mean, sort of, as you're saying, I mean, one of the ways through in these plays about female empowerment or strong women in Gunderson and in so many of the other plays on this list is that maybe if we got the men out of the way for a little while, we might move faster toward solving some of these problems. And also, if you want an embodiment of hope for people who have been given little in the sort of toxic masculine regime that now rules in Washington, those plays are bomb that, again, will indeed help you get out of bed.
Yeah. So 2 things that I am noticing that I think are related to what the American theater and the American people went through during COVID tie into these lists. So one of them is just the number of musicals that it's grown. When I looked, last year's list had 11 titles on it on the most produced shows. 2 of them were musicals. 2 years ago, it was 3 out of 12. And I think part of that is just musicals are expensive. Musicals also were harder when we were in the thick of COVID because there was just so much concern about singing and instruments and all of that. I think seeing more musicals getting produced is in some ways a sign of perhaps some returning financial health for theaters. So that even if I would love to see more new plays on this list, I think there may be some good signs for our industry in seeing a few more musicals on that list. The other thing that is interesting to me, and it speaks to finances as well as to national mood, your point, Mike, about all these chestnutty mystery plays. And I feel like we've talked on this podcast and in the past about the sort of historical cycles in which mysteries become more popular. Our brilliant artistic associate, Marcy Kearns, talked a lot in the office about the fact that, after World War I and the Spanish influenza and all that was happening then, there was this cycle in which murder mysteries became really popular as people who were grappling with tremendous loss gravitated to stories that had a neat ending you could tie up in a bow. You find a villain, you solve the mystery. Things clean up nicely in a world that felt incredibly chaotic. And I think that what I've observed is that as we came out of COVID, some companies programmed mysteries and they were box office bonanzas. Mm-hmm. Audiences flocked to them. They're like, this is what we want right now. And so people are programming them more. Like they're like, oh, that's popular. Great. Let me put another one in the season. Milwaukee Rep's doing 2 this coming season. Mm-hmm. And so there's something both about what is the audience asking for, but also I think about economics as we're coming several years back into full production after the pandemic. I do sense people looking around and going, what titles were blockbusters for those companies over there? Maybe I should do something like that. I could use a blockbuster to help rebuild our financial health. And so there's something happening there on the business side, I think.
Well, and again, you see female empowerment there too. I mean, now I'm using the term more loosely, but a number of these, whether it's new play pieces like what we did with Heidi Armbruster last year with Murder Girl, whether it's the Ken Ludwig adaptation of Murder of the Orient Express, or fresh in my mind because I just saw it again at Drury Lane a couple of weeks ago, Dial M for Murder, the Stephen Dietz adaptation, which takes the sort of love relationship at the middle and makes it a lesbian relationship. And that just changes the story. And so you're seeing in mysteries that even when they were written had a lot to do with the way in which men abused power. You see a lot of these adaptations. Dietz is a particular, you see this as somebody who's channeling that and sort of trying to draw that out further for an audience. And I think that's part of why these stories are satisfying. Is to see, again, kick-ass women sort of setting the world right, because in a world where they are consistently underestimated, which is, to go back to Lauren Gunderson, a Gunderson trope, right? In so many of her plays, you have women like that who surprise both the audience and the people within the play because they are doing so much more than they are given credit for being able to do. And I kind of love that. If that's a mystery that we're unfurling and unfolding, then, let's have more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anything we're starting to have filled a lovely, half hour of chat about this. But I want to give us a moment if there are other things you're thinking as you look at either of these lists.
No, I mean, the whole point of this, isn't it, is sort of like the Academy Awards or the Emmys, to get people to take a look at these plays. If you don't know them, the theater producers, think about producing them. Theater goers, think about finding a place where these are being done. And it's a really good list. If people aren't familiar with every title, They're around. That's what
Yeah.
we're saying. They're around. Go find them. And, that's the point of this.
Yeah, I'd say, Jen, in terms of closing, just a couple of things. One sort of whimsical, one sort of serious. This more serious one is another sort of trend that you see a little bit on this year's list. You see it with Dear Evan Hansen. You see it with Silverman's The Roommate in particular, and even a little bit with Eureka Day, is to the degree that you have topical plays, questions of who we are and who we think we are, and the way in which through social media, our sense of who we are gets changed by how we perform and by the personae that we're able to present is definitely there. And I think, as with mysteries, where you're dealing with an unsettled world, Marcy's 100% right, and mysteries sort of wrestling with that. These plays as well, even though Dear Evan Hansen is this wildly popular musical, it's also about what does it mean when you can reshape yourself completely within social media. So that's the serious point. The whimsical one, this is a plea to Rob Weiner-Kent and the good folks at American Theater. I get completely why you exclude Shakespeare as well as A Christmas Carol from these lists, because they would swamp them. But I would love, as a sidebar, to see, just with Shakespeare, what are the most produced Shakespeare plays in a given year.
Yeah.
Because I think that would offer its own commentary. My own sense is the tragedies and especially the histories, as we all know, listening to me on this podcast, I bemoan their loss all the time, but they're taking a back seat to even more of a prevalence for the comedies and for particular comedies than we've seen in years past, which I find fascinating.
Cosign, Mike. I would, the theater nerd in me would really love to see those lists year over year and see how those trends evolve.
Well, we'd have to take out Midsummer Night's Dream, wouldn't we? Let's be honest.
Or just
accept that is number one.
Yes.
And then what are the rest?
Yes. Oh my. Well, something on which we have total agreement. This was, as always, a beautiful conversation with you, beautiful humans. And I hope that it was at least a little bit entertaining and a little bit insightful for those listening. And we will say that is all for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jen Uphoff-Gray.
And I'm Julie Swenson.
And I'm Mike Fisher. Our podcast is produced by the expert keeper of all lists important for this podcast, who's Scott Hayden. You can follow us or share your thoughts on Facebook. That's always Theater with an ER, Theater Forward.
And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us. And please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
We're grateful to have you listening, and we will be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.